Well, is DC Comics doing it again? Well, not quite. Could the comics line once again hit the reset button on their continuity? Well, they seem to have learned their lessons, but there is indeed a reboot coming our way in the form of a new world inspired by Marvel's Ultimate Comics. Let's take a couple minutes to break down the new rumored report, the emergence of DC's Absolute Comics, and who is spearheading this whole new DC universe. Now, before we do that though, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and ring the bell for all the updates. We do daily Marvel and DC videos, and we want to be your place for all the superhero news, but we're going to bring it to you truthfully and transparently so you are in the know. Well, if you're a fan of DC Comics, you know they're really not afraid to reboot their universe. They've done it several times in recent decades, including with Rebirth and the New 52, but probably none are more classic than the one that happened after Crisis on Infinite Earth. Now, there have been some rumblings for quite a while that DC Comics is once again planning one of these reboots. Now, like we said, over the years, DC has overhauled the whole DC universe multiple times, and usually this is somewhat of an attempt to drum up interest and increase sales, all while giving fans a sense of something new but comfortable. Now, earlier today, the team over at Bleeding Cool started to share some information about an initiative being spearheaded by longtime Batman writer Scott Snyder. Now, let's be clear, Bleeding Cool is not an official source for DC Comics, and this isn't coming from DC Comics or anybody in the brass at Warner Bros. Discovery. Now, apparently this new line will indeed give us a new DC continuity, but it will be completely separate from the primary DC line. This is pretty much what Marvel Comics did when they first introduced their Ultimate line, and it sounds like DC is taking some lessons from that. That started as a way of retelling some of the classic origin stories like X-Men, Fantastic Four, and Spider-Man, all while not carrying the baggage of decades of continuity, allowing them to relaunch in a new world and tell new stories. Now, recently, Marvel kicked that back off in a whole new version of the world where they had no superheroes, making this version of Spider-Man in his 30s, and they are telling some interesting tales. Now, according to the site, the new DC line will be called Absolute Comics, although they're saying it's referred to as All In. Now, apparently Snyder will lead this whole thing, but it won't be like Dan Didio's New 52 or John's DC Rebirth. This is intended basically to be a very hands-off situation on Snyder's part, and it appears they intend to give creators much more carte blanche in achieving results in their stories, meaning there's areas they can drift into that are normally not allowed, and we might see some very interesting A-listers join this project. Now, if you head over to Bleeding Cool's site, they have a pretty interesting breakdown of the whole thing. I don't want to steal their press release just word for word and read you guys multiple paragraphs, but it is worth checking out. They're saying it's not an absolute reboot of the storyline, and it's meant to run somewhat adjacently, but leave the main storyline and continuity intact, calling it an attempt to do the New 52 right, along DC Rebirth with a more, quote, holistic approach. Now, beyond that, details are very scarce at this point, and we're probably not going to get any specifics for a while. It's pretty safe to bet that this will reset a lot of timeline storylines that have advanced some of these characters to new stages of life. For example, I don't suspect Superman will be a father already in this world, and we might actually see other characters return to previous mantles, like seeing Dick Grayson be Robin once again as a younger version of himself teamed up with Batman. How all that works out, well, we're going to have to wait and see.